Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War, Warhammer 2, quick match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the Vampire accounts against the Skaven on the map Shaggott's Stand. So rather than doing the usual sort of Graveguard plus oversaturation of backline spam, I decided to try something new today, or new with this build. And that's some Crypt Ghouls. I decided to throw in 4 units of them and try them out because I figured, these guys have very high weapon strength against squishy troops. They're pretty quick on their feet. They could flank, they could apply that poison debuff, and potentially really tear through units like Clan Rats and Skaven Slaves, and even Plague Monks pretty effectively. So I really wanted to give them a shot and try them out against Skaven. Obviously still anchoring the line, we do have Vlad here, the old champion who just will not die, with his high HP pool, decent melee stats, of course coming in with Invocation of Nehek as well as Raised Dead, so nothing too fancy, but the necessities. Master of Beguilement, of course, for that debuff. Didn't bother with Blood Drinker or Karstein Ring because I figured, he's tanky enough on his own, he doesn't really need that extra support. Sternsmen in the anchoring four other units of Graveguard. The Graveguard, of course, are one of the best units in the game in cost efficiency, and honestly, they're one of the best units against Skaven as well, because Skaven have very few answers to these guys. I'm not even sure if Stormvermin trade all that well with Graveguard. Obvious normal sword and board Stormvermin. Only really Plague Monk Sensor Bearers can tear through these guys pretty effectively. So otherwise, Graveguard will just trade really well with Plague Monks, which are very common, and lesser Skaven infantry, so they're very good. On the flanks, as mentioned before, some units of Crypt Ghouls, 4 in total, of course providing their poison, their massive anti-squishy infantry weapon strength, and that extra mobility, hopefully flanking around Pinstring. Then there's 2 Black Knights, one on each end. Of course, these guys do have decent armor. Once again, bronze shields. The main thing is, of course, they can tie down Doom Wheels, they can tie down Rat Ogres, and they can jump into the enemy backline and apply pressure to backline troops. A Necromancer is helping these Graveguard on the flank here, providing his auras to provide some regen, as well as, of course, the additional summons of Dead and additional invocations, and Forbidden Rod for Winds of Magic, because Vlad is very weak on Winds of Magic. In the corner, we do have the Feasters in the Dusk, who are the regiment of around Crypt Ghouls, and honestly one of the hidden gems in the Vampire roster. They do have stock, they've got Vanguard deployment, and they do have better mobility than vanilla Crypt Ghouls. So definitely a very powerful unit. Definitely would recommend trying it out in your builds, guys. I think this is a pretty cool unit. Not against all factions, but against some, it's definitely very, very nifty. And then in the back, we do have a unit of Chillgeists, who are going to be a nuisance. They do cause fear and terror, of course, and they have the chilling aura. They can easily shut down, say, Doom Wheel, and of course tear a bloody swath through Skaven infantry and artillery if they get those rear charges. For my opponent's build, he did bring, you can see Vanguard, some Gutterrunners with poison here, just a vanilla variant to harass and be a nuisance. But for his main line, a mix of Plague Monks, you can see 3 units of them there, 3 Plague Monk Sensor Bearers behind them, so going very heavily into the Plague Monk line here. So a lot of armor piercing to crack my Graveguard with. However, because of course, as mentioned, the Graveguard is a very good counter to Skaven, so being able to bring this sort of AP can be very potent. However, this does mean my opponent has some units that are very susceptible against Crypt Ghouls. Anchoring things in the center here, you can see an Assassin who is coming in with Trophy Heads and Rival High Talisman, a cool AoE debuff to melee attack, and then Concealment Bombs, which are free, so basically you might as well bring them. There's no reason not to. Slower Skrulk is coming in with the Plague Rash, with Wither, and this could definitely be nasty for Graveguard, which of course is rely on their armor. 50 seconds of if it overcasts minus 60 armor is a huge issue, and he also does have Pestilent Birth to spawn Plague Monk, so definitely some nifty stuff. Stand Your Ground and Liber Bubonicus, though no Rod of Corruption, so no melting infantry and AoE around him. For his artillery, my opponent did bring 2 units of Warp Lightning Cannons, so very, very potent. They do, of course, cause magic damage. They're rather accurate, and they can absolutely brutalize some of the heavier units here, like the Black Knights. And then to kind of protect the back line, a bunch of Skaven Slave Spears, 3 units of them, and a single unit of Storm and Halberd. So definitely some potency there for my opponent. You can see the Black Knights have already lost about 800 HP and 7 models to a single volley from the Warp Lightning Cannon. So definitely some rough stuff there for me. But I'm trying to sneak forward with the Feasters in the Dusk, with the Hex Wraiths, and trying to just kind of evade my opponent's notice for as long as possible. Unfortunately, it's not really working out. My opponent, you can see, is starting to shift around his artillery pieces, and he's going to be able to pressure me a little bit. Nonetheless, we ourselves are kind of flanking around, we're circling around, and here we go, straight for the jugular. Before my opponent can really make use of these Stormvermin, before he can get them behind the artillery piece to defend it, before he can really defend this gun, we do jump in with the Chillgeist, and they get that lovely rear charge, immediately drop this leadership on the crew here down to the negatives. We will lose a Chillgeist there in the pits to the Stormvermin, but it just doesn't matter. We need to break these guys, and I stay until the unit's broken, not just tear routed, to get them off as far as possible. Here, a little bit of a mistake. I got a little greedy. Threw my Black Knights in against the Plague Monk Sensor Bears. They do a little bit of damage on the charge, but honestly, the Plague Monks just hit so hard. They've got AP and monsters melee values. They are going to tear through the Black Knights before they can really disengage, and that was definitely a big mistake on my part. However, we do manage to rout off a cannon crew, which is definitely a nice little win there. We're able to force them off and buy ourselves some time, and that means my opponent only really has one artillery piece online, though it has done immense work to these Black Knights. You can see I've already lost over half their models. Meantime, these Black Knights over here have also lost 6 models to those Plague Monk Sensor Bears, so things definitely not looking great for my opponent. But at the same time, not looking that great for me either. My opponent, I've only managed to take 1 gun offline. My Black Knights got rebuffed by the Plague Monk Sensor Bears, and I've basically lost an entire unit of Black Knights. But you can see my opponent does get a summon in of Plague Monks, but we are just closing the gap here. Really trying to shut things down. You can see my opponent since Stormvermin in against the Feasters in the Dusk. And surprisingly, the Feasters in the Dusk, you can see, are trading pretty well with these guys. The Stormvermin don't have the best melee stats. The Feasters in the Dusk have better melee stats than these guys do. And that kind of compensates for the fact that Stormvermin have better armor. And you can see, of course, these guys are applying poison, which means the Stormvermin are not hitting very hard either. Definitely some rough stuff for my opponent. However, you can see he's pressuring my Shield Guys here very, very heavily between the Warp Lightning Cannon, between the Gutter Runners with poison. I wasn't really microing these guys, and I'm paying for it, losing half my Shield Guys there, which is a huge mistake. If you've got a high micro requiring unit like this, you really need to be on top of it, and big mistake for my part. But I was trying to save Vlad here, who has been hit by a Rod of Corruption, who has been hit by the Assassin and Scroll, can just beaten down. You can see the Sternsmen in here holding their ground, tooth and nail, fighting against these Plague Monk Sensor Bears. Over here you can see the Graveguard holding their own against the Plague Monks. Of course, with the Sensor Bears in there, things are going to be very, very, very rough. But you know, they're holding out, and they will slowly but surely club their way through these Plague Monks, which is some good stuff for me. And you can see the Crypt Ghouls now sweeping around the flanks and really going in for the pincer. You can see the Necromancer over here, Graveguard holding its own. Now these Plague Monks are going to start getting collapsed. Of course, they get a massive debuff to melee defense when they're flanked, and now they're going to get torn apart by the Crypt Ghouls. And of course, with their very low armor, and even despite the physical resist, they'll fall apart rather quickly once they buckle. Plague Monks are goners. That's that. You can see a Rival High Talisman has gone down, debuffing my Graveguard, making it much less effective. Vlad over here running for dear life. And my Chill Geist getting focused by that artillery piece that I'm just not able to take offline because my opponent just does have my Black Knights here shut down by Skaven Slaves. And you can see that I've summoned a whole bunch of infantry to try to shut down the cannon, but by now the Chill Geists disappear and die, even though the Plague Monks did get terrified there. So a little bit of a win for me, but nowhere near enough. Over here, the Crypt Ghouls, as well as the Feasters in the Dusk, managed to pinch through the Stormvermin and start clubbing them to death. You can see the Stormvermin just buckling. They are going to lose their strength in numbers. With that, they lose most of their melee defense, and or a lot of their melee defense, and they're in even deeper doo-doo. You can see over here the Black Knights, having chased off a Warp Lightning crew, are coming in against the Gutter Runners, and these Skaven Slaves really can't hold. The Crypt Ghouls are just so potent at clearing through crappy infantry like that. That's really some rough stuff. On the flank, you can see Vlad just running for dear life, trying to escape the Skaven Assassin. The Skaven Assassins don't have the best melee stats, but with Vlad being this weakened, I really don't want to risk it. And of course, I don't know if he has his Assassin's Trophy back up or not, and I really just don't want to risk that. So I'm summoning more Skeletons, trying to apply constant pressure to the backlines. These Graveguard are buckling under the weight of the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers, but you can see if you look at the kill counts, the Plague Monks got 27 kills. I'm not entirely sure what against the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers. They're sitting at 38, where the Graveguard got 54. So the Plague Monk Sensor Bearers are definitely, I think, evening the odds. You can see the Plague Monks obviously will do some damage to the Graveguard, but it's pretty uneven. Over here, finally, the Stormvermin are going to rout, which is going to be good. It means it's going to free up a unit over there. You can see the Graveguard here have chased off these Sensor Bearers, and that's really just leaving my opponent on just these Sensor Bearers who are tied down by zombies, wasting their energies. Over here, Vlad is fighting against Skaven Slaves, which is nice, but he's about to get shanked by the Assassin, who is on 1700 HP, so I hit him with an Invocation of Neck, wanting to stay alive. I really don't want to lose that leadership. Probably should have turned and fought here, but I really wasn't feeling it. And so I let the Crypt Ghouls catch the Assassin and start beating the snot out of him. Because the Assassin, of course, with his low armor, even with the physical resist, will get beaten pretty bad. You can see the cannon crew wiped out. Some of the Skeletons are finally dissipating, but it's too little too late. The Black Knights are in the mix, doing some major work. Interestingly enough, the balance of power is almost dead even. I think the reason was that, on paper, a lot of the units my opponent still has left are much more elite than the units I have left. Skaven, the Plague Monks are more expensive. Plague Monk Sensor Bears are much more expensive. And my opponent still has a handful of units of them here. They're kind of healthy and decent shape. My opponent still does have Strolk in okay shape. He still does have this Assassin in okay shape. But effectively, if you look at the map, you can see my opponent's troops are very scattered. With fear applying to the Skaven, he's going to start losing his troops. They're going to start falling apart. And Plague Monk Sensor Bears will not trade all that well with Crypt Ghouls. Crypt Ghouls are kind of optimized for tearing through these sorts of crappy troops. I still have Vlad running away, staying alive just barely, and I do manage to catch his leadership here in the pits, and they're going to start getting torn apart pretty quickly by the focus from the Black Knights, by the focus from the Crypt Ghouls, and that's going to be it for them. So despite the fact that this might look a little grim, we still have a lot of healthy Crypt Ghouls on the field, and that's really all you need to clear through these Plague Monks. You can see over here, and of course we still have, actually we still have plenty of Winds of Magic, enough for at least a few more Invocations of Neheg, and so things were definitely a little grim there for my opponent. So a Pyrrhic victory for the Vampire Counts. Looking over the stats, I'm not sure I can say the, and you can see, and here you can, I think this definitely kind of showcases how Plague Monks cost the same as Graveguard. But if you look at the kill counts here for the Plague Monks relative to Graveguard, it's just not comparable. The best Plague Monk slightly outdid the best Graveguard here, or the weakest Graveguard, but the top Graveguard here doing almost 100 kills apiece. Just hacking and slashing their way through those Plague Monks, through those cheaper chaff infantry that the Skaven put on the field. And honestly, most of my opponent's infantry was Plague Monks there, so really that's what the Graveguards were shining against. Because the Crypt Ghouls were usually the ones that got in the backline against the Skaven slaves. For the rest of the build, the Crypt Ghouls did okay. I think maybe 4 units of them is overkill, but I think you could definitely make it work. As I mentioned before, the Feasters and Dust were really good. Made some mistakes getting caught up against the Stormmen, but they're a very good unit, and they're fairly cheap. I believe they're only about 700, so very, very solid. The Black Knights did some okay works. Some miserable micro on my part saw me lose the Chill Geist for basically nothing. To be fair, I'm not entirely sure Chill Geist are worthwhile against Skaven. I brought them, and in retrospect, I could have gotten away with normal Hex Wraiths, and it would have saved me about 250 gold. Which honestly could have, if I dropped another Crypt Ghoul, I could have made room for another Graveguard instead, but the Graveguard, of course, doing great. The Crypt Ghouls did okay. This wasn't an optimal matchup just because my opponent has so many Plague Monks, which diced through these guys, but they did okay, and I think bringing 2 units of them or something is decent. They're an okay support unit. If your opponent has a bunch of spears on the flanks, preventing your Black Knights from getting massive value, you can get your Crypt Ghouls in on them, and they'll trash the spears. As far as Necromancer and Vlad, they did okay. Vlad spent most of the game fleeing, which is actually kind of surprising. Usually, especially against Skaven, you can do whatever you want with your hero and kind of run away, but not this game. So that was rough. The Stern's been terrible. They got annihilated by the hero mob and by the Plague Monk Sensor Bears. There was some rough stuff there, but otherwise, yeah, I was pretty happy with this build. I still think I prefer just bringing more Graveguard and a little bit more oversaturation of the backline, but it definitely was fun. For my opponent, the Warp Lightning Cannons, one of them did immense work. 62 kills, gained a Chevron, annihilated my Chill Geist, basically annihilated my Black Knights. That is huge value out of Warp Lightning Cannon, immediately paying for its double its value. So great usage there. For my opponent, the Plague Monk Sensor Bears did rather well. Though whether or not they were cost efficient is, I think, a little debatable. Graveguard are a lot cheaper. They still definitely dish out a lot of hurt to these guys, though I definitely think these guys performed pretty well. The Plague Monks, not so much. They're not very good against Graveguard, and it showed. Skaven Slaves did well. They're Skaven Slaves. They're not much to say. The Stormmen Halberds had a terrible day. 38 kills against Crypt Ghouls and Feast in the Dusk, not very worthwhile, and definitely wasn't great. Assassin and Scroll definitely spent the game almost gooning out Vlad, and that was rough stuff. It's rare that you play and almost lose Vlad. That's not something you're used to, honestly, as Vampire Counts, especially against Skaven. And then the Gutter Runners did some okay work, so I think this was a decent build for my opponent. Definitely caught me a little bit by surprise with the way my opponent chose not to really bring any big monsters or anything like that, but definitely I think a very solid build, very, very interesting build, but very solid. So good game to my opponent. Rats can't fly. They certainly can't, as we can see from the poor Skaven, but nonetheless, good game. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it entertaining. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. Any comments, criticism, anything like that, be sure to share those, and I'll respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.